Let's start recording so if we screw up, we'll get it right or something like that.
So, hello and welcome to the Tolkien Society. We're having some technical issues with the camera. I may have to go hook up an external camera. But we have audio right now. So bear with us as I will be fiddling with things to try to get the video working.
In an alternate universe, I get your
So, all right. So, yeah, that is definitely an alternate universe. Way off from reality. I'm gonna go get a camera. Do you have any notes you can ballpark?
I can ballpark.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead and do that while I grab. Yeah, we're on audio now.
Do you need me to?
It's not the best audio, but we'll do. No, you'll be fine.
All right.
Four
7 ages of Middle Earth.
This is the reason why I like the thing about Middle Earth. They have their own medals. And what I've been thinking is magic, we always, when you have a story like Lord of the Rings and you can bring in, oh, it's lighter than air and cuts with the ability of a diamond.
Well, like Galborn and such was supposed, or Eog was supposed to be meteoric iron. Well, there was. Did you see the whole article about that?
No.
So the problem with meteoric iron is because of the process it goes through, plummeting through the heat.
Okay.
It's crappy.
Oh.
Yeah, it is not a material you'd want to use to make an exceptional weapon.
But it's star metal!
So it's completely right. So it's completely mythical because they have tried, and it is crappy iron ore and stuff.
Yes, but who needs logic and science?
It needs to be completely, when it goes through and comes to the atmosphere, destroys its value.
I see.
Anyway, go ahead and.
I will. Thank you.
Well, then we
So-
just need to capture
Well, it's
it
like
up there
In
and
the
bring it down.
meantime, gentlemen.
Hey, we're talking about Lord of the Rings. We're talking about medals.
First, we need to go over the notes from last month, and then we can wax eloquently. So I don't have any written notes to share, but I'm just going to summarize.
What's on your hand there? Is that, that's for those who are watching.
Oh, what?
Listening.
Pay no attention to
Let
the
me
man behind the curtain.
explain. No,
Yes.
it is too long.
It's
Let
all
me
done
sum
his
up.
arm. It's all
Yeah,
done his
Pumper Dick
arm.
is going to marry Buttercup in a little less than half an hour.
There's a dangling
All right,
participle on his
all
elbow.
of the Statler and Waldorf may now come to order. Thank you. Okay, so last time when we met with, all two of us, Chris Cooperstein and I, in January of 2020, we talked about really just a handful of things. And no, I do not have anything written on my hands. First of all, we talked about the sad news of Christopher Tolkien passing away.
Sad.
Yeah. And one of the things we
Going to the Undying Lands.
Yes, one of the things we also the fact that, and that when Hawk comes back, I want to point this out, but just it is the crazy thought. He's the last of the Inklings, to pass away, because he was pretty much the youngest one.
He was initiated into the group with a solemn handshake.
Yeah. So and he was like 95 when he passed away. So here's a man who had was, as it were, the very last representative of that group. So we talked about that. We talked about, and I'll just repeat this as Hawk's back now. But last month we talked quite at length actually about Christopher Tolkien passing away, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But that was one of the points that we mentioned. We also discussed how kind of updates on the LOTR on Prime, basically Amazon Studios, as they call it now, a prequel. They don't really have a title. They need to get a title. But a prequel to the Lord of the Rings, the Second Age. Yeah. And so the news at that point last month was that they had put out a list of a number of the cast that will be in the series. So that was interesting. And today I'll be bringing up some things about the director that I found out that are interesting. And then we did read Letter 165, which was a longer one. But I don't think that we actually cracked open the Kalevala, did we, Chris? I think we said let's wait until the next month on that. So we have not read any more of that, that might be good to grab to bring up.
We have time. And
I
I just want to really give a shout out to we
only had two of us there, and so with such small resources as our mentor faculties could afford, we actually had a really good discussion about what does this mean with the passing away of Christopher Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien's son, and really the steward of his literary estate. What does that mean? And I asked Chris two questions.
The last steward?
Yeah, in a way. The questions were, first of all, what if Christopher Tolkien had never lived, as it were? What?
It would be very different.
Very
It
different.
would stop at the Lord of the Rings, and that would be it. Probably.
Exactly. So that was
Yes.
one thing we talked about was, well, and Chris, you brought up
Talk about alternate universes.
Yeah.
the
You're right.
the Silmarillion would not have been published.
Right.
In essentially a lot of that kind of background mythology.
We don't know that. Keith could have a daughter.
It's true. And he did have a daughter. But I'm just saying, what if you didn't have basically the role that Christopher kind of took on? And so we kind of posited that you could have had a situation, right, Chris, in which these things would have remained in boxes somewhere and would have been preserved.
For hundreds of years. I'm thinking of someone like Jonathan Edwards, who stuff had not been published for centuries. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the 20th century, there's an interest in getting him published, and all of a sudden, all of Edwards' life gets published, and the result is I believe, is one of the things that has created this neo-Calvinistic group.
Sure.
It's one of the inputs to
Sure.
the process.
Sure. Well, it's this idea of ad fontes, right? Back in the Renaissance, it was back to the sources, which is what kind of led to this
Yes.
flowering of European thinking, because in the Renaissance they went back to the Greek and the Roman sources. And in a way, it's kind of the same idea that, we rediscover someone. What if Tolkien wrote, there was this guy who wrote, some pretty good fantasy. It's kind of hard to even imagine this.
Fantasy and science
I don't-
fiction with
and then-
dark ages.
And
where
then later
people
on,
are-
right, you're
yeah.
saying, what if, and I know we're speculating, but what if down the road then, somebody
But-
rediscovers Tolkien and says, oh my goodness, there's a story in this box that's incredible, let's publish it.
Well, he already talked about with his publishers about the Silmarillion.
Yeah.
So maybe if there was enough clamor, maybe there would have been something done by the publishers to get a hold of the information from
Right.
the family. So I'm not saying that you guys are wrong. It would be an interesting speculation to think of what would happen if it just showed up like a rare painting
Sure.
that was found in somebody's basement or something like that. That would be.
It would be inevitable, I think, right?
I think
There
it
would be enough
published.
interest, and probably maybe sooner. I'm guessing within a century, but at the same time, it would have been maybe longer.
Right.
And then the second question I asked you, Chris, that we were talking about, right, was, okay, so now that Christopher Tolkien has passed away, now after his life, what does that mean now that he's gone?
Other hands and other minds.
And then kind of we talked about two possible trajectories. Now we're getting into the future, aren't we?
Right.
An optimistic view and a more cynical view.
Yes.
So, Chris, can you just kind of summarize what those two views would be?
I don't remember.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
one of them would be, and I'll be the cynic. The cynic.
Okay.
And I think you kind of were talking about the positive side.
All right.
So the cynic would say, Christopher Tolkien has passed away, and so the cynical kind of forecast would be that with this kind of attention to detail and knowledge of his father's writings, that the cynical view would say, now with his passing, it's going to just result in further commodification of Middle Earth,
Disney.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Please don't.
Tolkien will be
Please don't
spinning-
bring that up.
Tolkien will be spinning in his grave.
Right,
but
right.
It'll be
Yeah.
Disney.
And so it's kind of like that would be like the cynical view that it will be the kind of form of Tolkien that will actually be like going great guns and making cash left and right. But
Gonzo Middle Earth.
yes, yes, but would be
Also Disney now.
Wait a minute. Just look at Star Wars by Disney. That's all we have to do.
yes, Disney. Okay, but the idea would be that it would have lost the heart and spirit of Tolkien. So that's the cynical view. Chris, what would be the more positive, optimistic?
I call that the
more
realistic view.
positive,
Stop it.
optimistic view is that we get groups like us become the stewards of this and start to create our own multiverses.
And that'll only really happen if they stop expanding copyright law.
That's correct.
Doubling it and doubling it again,
Yeah.
which Disney will lobby to do
Yeah.
again. with
Sure.
Mickey Mouse.
But again, giving voice to
Yeah.
the optimistic vision.
Because then the
Right.
Shakespeare, you have Shakespearean
Right.
societies and keep things
Eventually,
going. Wagner society.
That's the question: is eventually whether there will be
Yes.
this opportunity. Because as you pointed out last month, Signum University,
Yes.
the breadth.
I did say that Signum and a couple others in a university level. Of course, there's going to be some. How do you say? Moderate rehistoricizing of things.
Yeah,
Uh,
unfortunately.
That just comes with the nature of what universities are. But the expansion and extension of creative research that gets
Yes.
generated from
Yes.
that, and
Marquette University. And,
so and if
Other
you
minds magazine.
if you
Yeah.
allow that to become a generator of a publishing, the concept of an open source,
uh-huh.
a university is supposed to be open source.
Supposed to be. Supposed to be. If that was true, I wouldn't have to have created
Right.
RPG research.
Right, I know.
Source spot alert.
Yes.
Don't poke him anymore.
Journals, paywalls,
So let's
proprietary university data.
so let's hope that occurs. That there is a push for
Yes,
Yeah.
here's hoping.
So I guess in a way, as far as trying to, just kind of summarize last month, I think we kind of
You optimists.
we tried.
I tend to try to temper my pessimism with a little bit of optimism.
So again,
I know, I
if I
try
can just
to. It's
remind,
just fun.
if I can just remind the society that what we're trying to do is just summarize, and then we'll move on from there. But I think again, there are two views, and perhaps as we were talking about, and time will tell, is that perhaps we can have some of both. In that we can be optimistic about those that at least there's hope while people are continuing to enjoy, share, and think about the literary legacy of J.R.R. Tolkien. But I think it's right and appropriate for us to be skeptical, but not cynical. Skeptical of the ever present danger of the shadow reaching out its hand towards that legacy, and again seeking to just use it instead of
Instead of
inspire.
giving back.
Yeah, and I to me, I feel, and this is where I'm getting partisan now. I feel that it strikes at the very heart of what his legacy is, and his book on fairy stories, or the essay on what he wrote about fairy stories, really gets back to what is fantasy anyway, and so our hope is that while there will always be this commodification or this spoiling of, almost like Saruman ripping the trees, and using the Entwood, Fangorn Forest,
Well, there's gonna be a little bit of both, I think.
Yeah.
I think there's gonna be some innovation that we're gonna go, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then there's gonna be some stuff that, let's be honest, is going to probably go against the grain and kind of hurt to look at, I would think.
Pillaging without contributing. So the big difference is between formerly Tolkien Enterprises, now Middle Earth Enterprises, versus Tolkien Society.
Yep.
Tolkien Society controls what's there and contributes, right? They put out more content from Tolkien, they maintain a literary standard, etc. They contribute to the intellectual property base, and they allow organizations like Tolkien Societies to write essays and publish things and do events, and we contribute and we talk, and we're contributing to the bulk of work.
And that's Tolkien
In-
Enterprises?
No, that's Tolkien Estate.
Society.
Estate.
Right, Tolkien Estate contributes. They manage and allow others to contribute and grow in a positive, productive way.
Yep.
Tolkien Enterprises, now Middle Earth Enterprises, has never contributed to that body of work. They've only pillaged it. Now, Peter Jackson has helped raise awareness and things like that.
Yeah.
And so they capitalize
What?
on it.
one could
You're
lead to the other.
saying that Peter Jackson has something good?
By raising awareness through the movies and such, and hopefully
This is
inspire a
almost-
new generation of readers.
This is almost
Yes.
a trope now, Chris.
Yes. But
It's a trope.
But Tolkien Enterprises, now Middle Earth Enterprises, has never brought
Yeah.
new content, authorship, contributed to the body. They just exist for licenses and lawsuits. And that's all they do. Other third parties have helped contribute through those licenses. Iron Crown Enterprises with Merp and Tor and stuff like that. But Middle Earth Enterprises, Saul Zahnt's company, has never in any way contributed to the betterment of the Tolkien IP. They will, and they never will. If that Tolkien IP gets acquired, like the Tolkien Estate side, by Disney, you will see it treated the same way as the Saul Zahnt's company treated it. You will no longer see from that entity
Yes.
an improvement in contribution. You will only see pillaging. And the current freedom we have as societies and events and stuff hopefully won't be eliminated, but will become more difficult because of those licensing.
Almost like the Palantir that once used, if I may use this as a metaphor, once used to, as it were, establish this connection with the dark side or whatever, is very difficult to redirect and have that vision that
To
Yep.
take, yes.
As Disney has acquired Star Wars, and we are several years on,
Suffering.
how has the change in fan films been, and other content been?
Do you include in content some of the creative things that they've done, for example, with, my students have said that they've been able to go to Disneyland and see the Star Wars park that they've done, which is apparently pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'm not talking about Disney specific.
There's a big difference though between Star Wars and Tolkien. Tolkien started as a literary
Yes,
resource.
yes.
Star Wars started as a movie media resource, which was already ready-made.
And Lucas was quite happy
So,
with
yeah.
the commercial side of that, right?
Right, so I'm afraid it's kind of an apples and oranges comparison with Star
Okay,
Wars.
fair.
You need to compare something
Fair.
like C.S. Lewis's works or some other literary work.
Well, C.S. Lewis's
So-
works had, by Lionsgate, I have some issues with to begin
Right.
with, which I do
But-
love. There were some parts of it that I loved,
Yeah.
and then there were some parts of it that
The
felt
BBC
like it went
version was
completely
far
against
better.
the books were
Yeah.
far better.
So if I may, on the optimistic side,
Yeah.
love it or hate it, Game of Thrones has gone beyond the author's efforts.
Okay.
Love it or hate it.
Fair.
Right. He pretty much quit writing after people were guessing the ending and everything else, and whether or not he ever writes another word for it, who knows? He's quite the grouch. But they're spinning off, right? Other series. They're adding to the canon. This isn't Disney. This is whatever those people are through the licensing through him. But they're creating that whole body of work in a contributory way that hopefully, if they allow it, there will be new writing. But we don't know that yet.
Like
We don't know
Breaking Bad spinning
that. It
off
spun off Saul and
Saul
stuff like that. Yeah.
and
But
the current Star Trek
but
series spinning off Picard and spinning
right,
off
but I want
Section
to bring
31,
back to
yeah.
right now
Yeah.
though that is only spun off other media stuff, not books. What I'm
Got
just
it.
wondering is, so if you look at what used to happen with Star Wars when Lucas was in charge, and there were all the books, and that was establishing canon, etc.
Yes.
But the books came after the movie, not before. Unlike Tolkien, right? So we keep on this apples and oranges thing that we kind of go round and round and round. But it's a different situation.
It's a unique one, isn't it? Yeah.
Not unique. I mean, there are other authors.
What I
that
mean
have
though
movies
is
made,
it
but-
has a certain corpus, right?
Yeah.
The body is, and I know
and it's such an extensive body.
and so therefore now it's controversial because of now. Oh, this is now part of legends. As
And it's the never-ending battle about canon. et
Exactly,
cetera.
yeah.
Well,
So, so what I'm afraid will continue to happen is what we saw happen with the Peter Jackson films. Each successive one went further and further off the rails of being a Tolkienian universe. Forget the canon
Right.
part. Okay, this is derivative. And Tolkien said for other minds and hands, etc., and other minds
Yep.
magazine, right? We create all kinds of stuff, but we tried, like Tor did a good job with, to stick to the essence of that Tolkienian experience of Middle Earth, of Numenor, of Arda, of whatever, and that heroic approach to being the good guys, etc., the struggle against evil, etc. But if you look at what happened with each successive Peter Jackson film, is they altered core plot things such as Frodo offering the ring to the Lord of Nazgul and things like that. As they went more and more off the rails, you watch the movies become something other than.
That was
Tolkien
actually
by
the key
far.
point for me. Like that was the beginning. Like
Oh.
I would say that
that was so
I would say
foundationally wrong.
the
It
foreshortening,
broke so
like a
much.
lot of the minor changes, you would just say, well, how much of
You're
this
not
is
making me feel better. See, that makes me, when they say, "Oh, I get more creative control," they've been given a set of tracks that they should have followed because they had all this information,
Yeah,
and they didn't do that.
Well, and then
so
you go to the Hobbit movies,
Who is
and they
they?
went.
Depends on who it is, though.
Yeah, it does. It really does. Then you go to the Hobbit movies, and they are just made for video games and merchandise, right? We started with a
come
little
on.
snippet.
That barrels down the.
yeah,
that's so
no, that's not
realistic.
set up for a video game at all. No, or the inside a goblin town, and I was like freaking Donkey Kong and stuff. I'm like, oh my goodness! If we were back in 8-bit days, that's how it would have to render.
whereas something like
A Hunt for Gollum.
I'll give you a
Or
years of her life.
yeah,
Spent time helping her son and other writers continue on
With
Right.
her.
with Hearn and other stories that she had.
Dune, Frank
created.
Herbert's
Yes.
son,
Uh-huh.
Wheel of Time,
Robert Jordan.
and handing it off to from
Brendan Sanderson.
Brendan Sanderson.
as much as I love Dune,
Yeah,
but if you
but
read
those
the
were curated legacy handoffs.
if
which is great.
you read
Yeah.
them though, you can tell. I mean, there's a difference between the
Of course there
authors. And
well, like
that's,
Dune,
that's
Dune
the
the
issue.
son is arguably a better writer. right?
Well,
That's
the
the
issue
bottom
though,
line.
the issue that comes down to is the original author had a specific direction for
Yeah.
everything that was going on. And when we
Yeah.
hand it to somebody, and I just don't have any trust in a lot of the Hollywood
So-
types that get that run things.
Yeah, the big question is how uptight and rigid do we want to be about other hands and minds?
Because
handling an idea?
if we're too much, I think I'm reading where you're
then
going here.
it's yeah.
Then there's basically no creative continuation. That's
Yes, exactly.
it. And I think that this is a necessary problem that we're facing because,
Yes.
and I think you're right though, Corey. I mean, I think like it's clear.
There are parties we trust more than others.
Exactly, and a flagrant disregard. I mean, that's the thing is we can say either they got it or they didn't get it. And this is maybe a really good, if I may, kind of moving on then from the notes, which essentially that was a summary of our discussion,
Sure.
aside from reading letter 165.
Okay.
But if I may just follow on with something I want to bring up. So the latest news on LOTR on Prime from Amazon is that this month they began filming in New Zealand. And I do have an update on that. This is kind of a small thing. And while I'm talking about this, I'm going to pass out. This is well, I'm not going to pass out. I'm going to pass out a paper. Transitive verb. But this
He
is
was drinking earlier. I saw him.
copy. So this is a map of New Zealand showing some of the sites from the Hobbit films. They shall not be mentioned, but from the Lord of the Rings. And actually where they're filming right now is in studio in Auckland. So there you go.
So are they jamming drones?
What?
Okay, so let me just share this. This is actually an update, and I was looking, and I only found this in a New Zealand website. So here's the facts. Stunt woman's serious injury mars start of filming for Amazon blockbuster. Filming in Auckland for big budget television series Lord of the Rings, which again, that's not what it's going to be called. Although, I think maybe the reason why they're staying with this, go ahead and pass it on.
I'm going to show the camera and then
Yeah.
pass it on.
Although, I should say this as a quick side. Maybe the reason why they still call it LOTR is because the Second Age is really about how does he become Lord of the Rings, and that there's more than one ring
Sure.
in it, right? But anyway, I digress. So let me read this and get your reactions. Filming for the big budget television series Lord of the Rings, or prequel, has made a rocky start after an accident on set left a stunt woman seriously injured. And this does have a little bit of a...
Hang on just a second. February 15th, 2020 is today's date, by the way. Go ahead. Sorry.
Alyssa Cadwell, an experienced Brisbane-based stunt woman, actor and dancer who recently doubled for Nicole Kidman in Aquaman, is understood to have been injured during rehearsals at the sprawling Kumeu Film Studio in Auckland. Sources confirm she fell into water in large tanks as planned. So that was the stunt she was doing. But her head struck a bolt in the process. One witness said the resulting injuries were traumatic.
Yeah.
Cadwell, who recently wrapped filming in South Australia in her first big break as an actor after being cast as combative vampire Nitara in the upcoming Mortal Kombat reboot, declined to comment when reached by the Weekend Herald. As you know, there was a strict NDA, non-disclosure agreement, so there will be no comment, she said. Cadwell is understood to have suffered severe concussion and requires further plastic surgery. She was recently discharged from hospital.
So they did I wonder if it was an unnecessary scene like they did to Aragorn, where they nearly killed off the actor
Viggo Mortensen.
Viggo Mortensen.
Going over the cliff.
For a scene that was completely unnecessary. Yeah, we'll drown him in a river.
Right?
Nearly killed him. Yeah.
And that's-
for a completely unnecessary scene that never existed. They nearly killed Viggo.
Okay, but
For no reason.
okay,
no good reason.
but Viggo,
And then they cut the whole scene out.
right, but Viggo did it. He said, "I want to do all my own stunts." Right?
Sure, of course.
So he could have had a stunt double almost drowned.
Sure.
But
But completely unnecessary scene that they then cut.
so here's an interesting question I want to ask those of you, because this does give us a little, very, very small, more like a keyhole. Okay. What possibly in the second? I mean, she may have been stunt double for Galadriel, because we know she's going to be in this. We don't know. It could be a ranger, it could be an elf. We don't know. But falling into water, and I'm thinking, we still don't know when in the Second Age they're going to, but we know that it's definitely going to include Numenor before it perishes.
Okay, and so Valerian is around?
Beleriand is not around because
Not
that
around,
perishes at
already.
the end of the First Age.
Okay, alright.
So we've got basically anywhere from the founding of Numenor all the way up to the War of the Last Alliance in Middle Earth between
Okay.
the faithful versus the elves and men. So I'm thinking they won't be starting after the perishing of Numenor. So do we have any thoughts on that? I mean, they could be.
Well, there's so many. I mean,
What in the
during
world?
Numenor, there's so much the growth. I mean, like we're going to be doing in Tolkien Moot and such.
Why would you have
The growth of the Numenorians from first, so after the big battle, they're given the land of gift.
Yep.
And they all are transported to Westerness and left there, in Numenor. And then hundreds of years go by before they even consider, like first they just make local ships just around the island, but many hundreds of years go by before they ever start venturing to the east. back to Middle Earth.
Yep.
Many, many, many hundreds of years. Meanwhile, Middle Earth all
Catan,
falls under
Sea
Sauron's control, right? It just gets darker and darker, and it's overrun by beasts and evil men, and it's pretty much completely overrun except for little elven bastions here and there, and dwarven bastions. The rest of the land is just completely dark and enveloped in darkness.
Yeah.
And the Numenorians first show up, and as I said, I've got these adventures I've detailed and researched pretty heavily, to these primitive tribal humans, right, who are terrified of their own shadow.
Yep.
And and these great lords of men show up, right, toweringly tall, in their mail. They're not fully in their full glory yet by any means. They still have a few thousand years to go for that, but or something like that, a long time, many generations to go.
Sure.
But they come as gift bringers. They bring more advanced technology of weapons and things like that, and bring that to Middle Earth, and bring a little bit of light, as Tolkien phrased it, to the darkness of Middle Earth.
Right.
What?
Oh, they bring magic. No, that's the
Yeah.
wrong word. But from those from the perspective of the men.
Oh yeah, that seems like magic. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Yeah. What was Asimov or whatever?
Yes,
right?
yes.
Sufficiently advanced society, whatever.
Which is also quoted in Thor. Just
Okay,
point
yeah.
that out.
Yes.
So anyway, but there's these huge gaps in between where they just come out, they're exploring, and then they never see them for many, many years at a time. And then as Numenorian starts to grow and they deplete their resources on Numenor, especially their forests, they then start looking at Middle Earth as a resource trove, being a large island nation, and then they go there and make friendships back with the elves, with the Manish races, etc. And then start harvesting resources and bringing the trees and such, and
That's
bringing
where
them back
the
to
wives
Numenor.
went to.
Uh-huh.
What's that?
That's where the end.
Yeah, they're in the ship's holds. They are the ship's holds.
that's
That's
my cob
That
right
would be
there,
a good
man.
answer.
She's a good ship, she is. That's
That
terrible.
figurehead on the front is silly. Her face.
Oh my goodness.
Wow,
That's dark.
That's
That's very
make that
dark.
alternate ending. They come to like the port of Umbar,
Right.
with the Black Numenorians and all these ships, and like the ships the faces all
Yes,
looking agony or
contorted.
something, and
Oh my.
you found what happened to the Entwise.
Oh my goodness.
I like that.
Number.
We gotta tweak that as an
Yeah.
alternate ending.
No.
Because when the GMs get to
Yeah.
pick 3 different
Yeah.
endings,
Yeah.
we gotta add that as a 4th one. Anyway, and then slowly as they grow in power and in fear of death, and they start to glorify death, they start to glorify their dead,
Yeah.
their lives start to shorten,
Yes.
and
They care more.
then
for
they
the
slowly
shoes.
rise up to our Pharazôn, who was the most glorious of them all, totally beats back all those dark forces from Middle Earth as they go up the islands, taking all the trees, etc. Just completely deforesting all along the rivers and such.
And here, yeah.
But at the same time, driving back the evil forces of Sauron.
Even to Mordor's door.
Well, and then eventually directly challenging Sauron himself, and then Sauron doesn't even fight him. He just goes, "I give, you got me. Everybody else go hide. You got me here. Take me."
Yeah.
And boy, it sure seemed contrived.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
he
but
did say he was
Pharazôn
afraid.
or whatever was too
Sucker.
No, he was patting himself on the back.
Right.
He
Not
thought
realizing he was
he was
being
so
set up.
arrogant.
It's a military triumph, right? You
Right.
get your prisoners back.
Totally whooped.
Yep.
Mission accomplished.
And then you bring
He
the
can't create
And then you
any
bring
trouble.
the enemies
virus.
to whispered poison to
You
your
can't
ears
create
as old
any
age
trouble.
sets in.
Yeah, he's
And then, so I mean, that would be a great time to come
Yeah.
in so if you want to start with a really dramatic beginning, have the March of the Numenorians and Sauron surrender.
see. This is a really interesting question.
And then the time lapsing,
I
and
think
the
they're gonna-
corruption.
Yep. I think one
That
of the
would be a
things.
great time to come in.
But
that's-
if you've got 5 seasons, you
Well,
do that
then
in
start with the
season 2 or
Numenorians,
3, yeah.
the battle of the Numenorians
He's been in
given.
for 5 seasons.
They've authorized 2 so far.
Yeah,
But they
do
got the rights to fight.
the great last battle that gave them the gift. So they're given a quick synopsis like they did with the first Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Of they unified together, and because the only 3 tribes that didn't betray in the great battle. They were given the gift. They raised up an island from, like, right? How epic is that? They
I
raised an
know.
island from the sea to give you as a gift. Here you go. Then they quickly grew and slowly adventures forward. Right? You could totally synopsis this in 5 minutes, lay out the whole history, and now they're one of the greatest naval forces around. Go.
Yep. Star Wars Exhibition. Exposition.
I think it's also possible that what they may want to do is they may choose to immediately grab attention, because oftentimes that first season is kind of a make or break.
Yeah.
And so they might at the very beginning want to do something and then, as it were, go back to how did we get to this point.
Mhm.
So that's another
Sure, you never
possibility.
know when they jump around.
Well,
We're
it-
so conjectural.
I know this is reckless speculation, but
You know, and the question is how
Reckless,
how
run
Game of
this-
Thrones
run
are
ahead.
gonna make it.
okay, so that
Like, because of all the elvish intrigue and human intrigue
So
and all that.
we have discussed this as well last month, and one of the things that is encouraging is when you look at the producers and then all the screenwriters, the massive, diverse, as it were, group of people who are kind of involved in this creatively, does, I think you said it, Chris, it is encouraging. It seems
Yeah.
less
The-
likely that
the
they're
list-
just going to Game of Thrones it.
The
you know?
list of creators does involve one Game of Thrones person.
I don't think that's
But-
necessarily a bad thing. The political
And
intrigue
that's
here
not a
is
bad
great.
thing, but
Well,
there's
there's
a
a lot of
broad
that.
spectrum in the creatives that goes
Right.
Yeah.
all the way into,
Yeah, if they can temper each
The-
other, that would be
yes, let me pull it up.
So,
But, yeah.
the director is J.A. Bayona, and I really did not know him very well. And so last night,
great. What kind of work is?
well, so here's what he's done.
He interviewed him the other night.
So here's,
Because before Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's list.
He grilled him.
Pun intended.
so this is a Spanish director who had only done some Spanish films until in 2007, The Orphanage, which is more of a horror film.
Oh, no.
But hold on.
Okay.
Then in 2012, The Impossible with Ian McGregor, and that I watched last night, and that was very good.
What was it?
It was basically set. It was based on a true story about a family that had been washed away by the tsunami in 2004 in Southeast Asia, and they end up actually surprisingly all surviving.
That's a similar pattern to Peter Jackson, who did a lot of the missing women in Australia thing.
Okay.
He did his
Well,
horror
I
films,
prefer
and
not
then
to
he did
compare the two.
Well, I
then,
just
yeah.
like, another horror director. Oh, great.
So we've got Epps from Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, and The Sopranos.
Oh, wow.
So
So those are all rich social dynamic
Correct.
interactions. So that's a plus.
feature writers J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, who did the Peter Jackson adaptation, which could be good or bad. And then
Did they do
executive,
the Hobbit ones or the first Lord of the Rings ones?
I think it's the first.
Okay, because the first one was pretty. I can live with the first movie.
So executive producers, Lindsay Weber, 10 Cloverfield Lane, Bruce Richmond, Game of Thrones, Gene Kelly, Boardwalk Empire, Tal
Boardwalk's pretty dark.
Iguado, and Jennifer Hutchison, Breaking Bad. The writer, executive producer, Jason Cahill, The Sopranos, and Justin Doble, Stranger Things.
So
Okay,
it's
we've got a lot of dark writers.
dark
and dark.
but a bit broad in terms of
At least
the
some,
feel.
so they might
Yeah.
focus more on the relationships rather
Character
than the
interaction,
action.
yes. Uh-huh.
And that certainly makes a more interesting series
Yeah.
than the Peter Jackson movies later.
It
packing
gives
in
me
so
a
much action.
little bit of optimism, just a
Yeah.
little bit.
So, as I was saying,
Yeah.
so Bayona also directed A Monster Calls in 2016.
Yeah.
Which is
It's a story of a boy who's kind of bullied, etc. And then, so there's kind of it's not horror. It's more like this creature from the earth itself. It's able to it's kind of like Never-Ending Story, but a little bit more edgy, in that this creature helps this boy to kind of overcome all these difficulties. Part of it's because he's very angry, so it's kind of partly about him. He's in this place between he's too old to be a boy, too young to be a man, and so and dealing with grief, etc. But I think all these things. What really struck me, in watching the one film last night was clearly the director was choosing to use light, like really do a good job of not just being like rush, but make it interesting and seek to use beauty, even though there's these terrible things going on around.
It sounds like, and this may not be true for Game of Thrones writers, but it sounds like the majority of these writers are going to be more of a zoomed-in view rather than
Correct.
a epic view, potentially.
Yes, which could be good or could be
Sure.
bad.
I mean, if it just turns into a fantasy soap opera,
Because
fantasy Breaking Bad or Sopranos,
my view of Jackson is epic battles and nothing in between.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he didn't. He really did not flesh out those relationships well.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and this seems like maybe the other end of that spectrum potentially.
Yeah.
If they can balance that so that it still has Tolkien's epicness there, that from like each season there it builds to something epic, and you
Yeah.
get something epic in each season, then that seems like a pretty good formula.
And you've got
BS
Sauron in physical form now, also.
Right.
So it's going to be
Avatar
actor on stage.
Avatar,
Yeah.
Lord of
That's going to be
yeah.
a really important
Which
role.
should be great. I want to say role playing, but great character, and hopefully they pick a
Good
really
times.
good.
Somebody as good as
He's
Tom
gotta
Hiddleston.
be.
Yeah.
He's got to be a very believable good guy, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because with the exception of Círdan or somebody who didn't trust him, everybody else fell for him.
Galadriel didn't, and Gandalf
Galadriel
and
Círdan.
Círdan. No.
Yeah, but everybody else fell under his-
Celebrimbor was like, yeah.
Yeah, so he can't seem sinister.
No.
He has to seem like a good guy. He really does. If they pick an actor who's kind of sinister, that kind of ruins the believability of why
Yep.
would everybody fall for that.
Yep. This
So
is
that'll be very interesting.
This is,
Well,
of course,
that's
of course
one of the-
predating the capture of Sauron. This is
Right.
Yeah, when he's
That's one of the
Until they
things-
fall in more. I mean,
That's
he
the
has-
one thing I never liked about the Lord of the Rings movie was that Sauron was not a person. He was a giant
well,
suit of armor that they attacked,
yeah,
and
but,
that he got like he didn't have
but
any
that was
words
appropriate.
or.
That was appropriate.
I didn't
for the
feel
books.
that. I feel like it was just a giant suit of armor and that there wasn't anybody in there. It was just energy
Yes,
flowing out.
because when Numenor goes under, so
Yeah.
when
he loses his very form.
when they destroy Numenor, he loses his ability to have physical form again. It's destroyed. He can never have fair form again at all, of any kind. His fair form of Avatar is destroyed. After that, he can only be a great and terrible form. And even that was difficult to agree. It took him a long time to recoalesce.
In a way, his
He
armor.
could only be terrifying.
I mean, it doesn't describe it much in the books.
But he should have
But
been
it is a great
something.
and terrible
I
form.
feel like he should have been something other than a giant suit of armor. I really do feel like there
They
was
actually
something
tried.
that they missed.
Have you ever watched the extras? So there's a piece there in the making of The Return of the King,
Yeah.
where it talks about originally when they sally forth and they go to the gates to the Morannon and to the Black Gate. And then Aragorn challenges him to come out. And originally they had this kind of shadowy light. It's kind of just hard to describe, but a little bit more of a humanoid form, and they were like, it just doesn't work.
It's really hard, yeah. And also in the old Bakshi, the Lord of the Rings and such, right? They did the silhouettes of the fight of the battle between Isildur and Sauron, and he's just a shadow. And he was a great. He is described as great and terrible, and that the others cowered and were dwarfed by him.
I know, but
and
it
he
just
came out for battle and
armor with essentially spikes on it.
yeah.
To me,
well,
doesn't.
Morgoth. So
doesn't-
Sauron.
No, that's Jackson.
I don't think Tolkien
That's
described.
Jackson. Yeah. I know.
Yeah, Tolkien doesn't really describe the armor that Sauron wore, just that he was great and terrible
Yeah.
and all this. However, with Morgoth, I think he did. I think when Morgoth came out to fight,
Yeah.
he
Against
describes the armor and everything, and it was like that. It was this evil armor, if you will, and it could have been easily extrapolated towards Sauron, because Sauron was always trying to copy Morgoth.
All I'm saying is it kind of came off as a ghosty evil instead of a personal evil.
Yeah,
like,
I thought that was appropriate.
Like the idea is that he has a personality, but it came across as if he was just like,
Meyer. He's Meyer.
I know he's a Maiar, but what I'm saying is like he was more like a ghost than he was. What I mean by ghost is like, ooh,
Yeah.
you know, like
Yeah.
he didn't have any personality. He was just like some energy
Evil
that was
essence.
but he has a personality.
Do you mean more generic almost? Is that what you're trying to get at? Like this kind of a Jack in the Box quality to him or something?
Yeah, I feel like it was almost it was almost too much like watching a bad horror movie's version of
You think it could
of
have
a
been
bad
creepy?
guy.
Tell me what you think you would have. What
would
could
have
have
been
been there?
more
Like,
for you?
would you like more creepy or what?
I don't think of the creepy. I'm just saying like
What would have made it more real for you?
I think the voice would have been if they heard the voice and it wasn't just ooh,
Not
you know.
not parcel time.
Yeah, it's not sounding like, you know, like it's speaking orc half the time. You know, if it
Black speech. Well, they did try to do this, didn't they, in the Hobbit films, trying to say what would it look like when the White Council drives out the necromancer from there, and so you get a little bit more there, where what you're talking about. I guess part of it is the fact that, I mean, in Jackson defense, which I don't do very often, but it's like you're doing a prelude to. So you honestly, it's like, what is this movie really about? They didn't even have to do that. They could have completely dropped the context and not had it at all. So I think it is incomplete, and I think the reason why is because it wasn't at that moment, right, trying to create these characters and these scenes as, like, I mean, if you want to get to that sense of evil intent, we see that in a bit more in the films where you've got this, it's as it were the evil power behind the wraiths, etc. I mean, part of
it
it
just
is,
feels like the distance between like Sauron,
Yeah.
you know, being, you know, let's be honest, it's kind of like the devil. It's like giving the devil no personality is the way I feel like they pretty much did.
Gee, Officer Krupke.
Have
Just
you
misunderstood.
have you read the Akelabeth and then after the fall of Numenor about what happens with Sauron? Because Tolkien describes what happens to his form.
Well, yeah, his form disappears, but I feel like when I watch the movie, I don't feel the threat.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of.
I don't feel the threat from Sauron. It feels more like an elemental threat, not an actual
it's
intelligence.
nature.
There's no intelligence that it's just
So-
kind of this looming
Yeah.
kind of thing in the background that nobody really cares
So
about,
how would
that
you
doesn't
know?
really interact with.
I think, though, I would say that maybe this is because simply, look, it's the War of the Last Alliance. What you really, in order to see that, what you're describing, is I hope what they will, if I could bring this to a close, I hope that they will do more of that in
With
the
the
Amazon
series.
series.
Right,
Because
we'll see
because
Anatar's personality.
it needs to, right? It's like, you need to see the plotting. You need to
Yeah.
see the.
I think
scheme.
that's the reason why Tolkien was so big on the Silmarillion being involved, because like if you just read the Lord of the Rings, like
Right.
you
You don't
don't
have
understand, you don't
Oh,
have the
he
context.
rarely
for it.
shows
Delayed
up. He
13
rarely shows up.
years
Yeah.
because of that battle, releasing the books. That was part of that delay. Was he's like, no, you need this whole story, or you won't have the context.
I was just reading the other day when I was looking through the letters, and at letter 35, and he's saying in 1939, in February, yes, I've got this other story. I've got about 300 pages of manuscript. I think I should be able to get it finished by June. Oh,
Yeah.
this is 1939. You know.
Yeah.
But if maybe we should, can we
Desolate.
Moving along.
Moving along. One other question that's interesting
It
to
would have
consider.
been, it would have been interesting to see if they could have backed a little bit up, like before he became the suit of armor, and showed what he looked like before he died and became
Yeah,
the
that
suit
wasn't
of
necessary
armor.
for that story.
I'm gonna recognize that in the notes, and I'm gonna move on.
Go ahead.
So, so the other thing that's interesting is what, here they decided to film in New Zealand again. I just thought it was interesting from a choice of like, it was like Scotland versus New Zealand, and New Zealand had more
More varied terrain and weather.
and also more money. They were like, well, we'll kind of
And
bankroll
less
a
expensive.
fourth of the cost of this.
So,
But I wanted to
UK
just,
tax system.
so Tolkien never went to New Zealand, right? Okay, so it's kind of one version of what it could look like, and obviously it has this background because the other movies have been also filmed there. But I just want to ask what you guys thought about this.
Well, the thing about New Zealand that kind of works for me with the whole Middle Earth thing is that it's when the world was younger and more primal and changing and fresh and sharp and all of that.
Yeah.
And New Zealand is that, right? It is a volcanic island chain that is much newer. It's a very young land relative to the others that have been worn down by time.
The old
It's sharp,
world.
it's large,
Yes.
it's grandiose, it's extreme. And so for me, it seems they've done a good job picking an environment that gives a good variety of range, and it has that primordial, that's the word I'm
Yes.
looking for, it's a primordial feel to it.
so
Where is it compared to the equator? Is it?
it's south.
It's
Is it
north
close
of
to Australia?
30,
North of Australia,
yeah.
northwest
Let
of
me see
Australia.
here.
So
It's
is
not
it
at the equator.
Is it
it's
kind of
close to
like
it.
Britain in terms of rain and?
Well, it's a long,
No.
it's got a long range.
No,
It's
it's-
quite varied in a short area.
So, but it's also very uniform in its weather, meaning that
Very changeable weather. In that region, has a lot of changeable weather.
yes, certain parts have lots
Yeah,
of.
but not like
changeable-
Japan, where it's like really regionally distinct.
Yeah.
Japan
So
was
it's
really
actually
distinct zones.
farther south than Australia.
Oh.
Oh, is it?
I didn't
It's
realize that.
Or the Tasmanian line.
Oh.
Okay.
Um,
Because the farther south you are, just like farther north you are, the colder
Yeah.
it gets.
Yeah.
right. But
That's-
Australia, the mid of Australia is desert.
Right. Well, yeah, but it's
Um,
an ancient land.
But Tasmania is more steppe forested. And New Zealand is also kind of in the middle between.
Yeah, but what's interesting, Australia is so tectonically old. Like,
Sure.
It just doesn't have all
Yeah.
the activity.
Yeah.
It's literally all the mountains have been ground down to sand. It's just a really old continent. It doesn't have the liveliness.
So if I pull up the
It's a map.
satellite, we'll see.
Oh.
All the
Right.
green parts are where
Nobody
there's
lives here.
one
Wellington.
person per square
Christchurch,
kilometer.
right.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
78%
this
of the
is
islands.
dry.
Yeah.
desert.
Although much of the U.S., if you saw the same
Steppe.
thing, you'd be surprised
And
with
this
most of the
mountains.
central
We
area.
lived in some of those places.
Anywhere from the Rocky Mountains
You
to
get
the
farther
Appalachians.
south
you
and
can
it
see all
becomes
that.
complete forest. Fjordish.
Well, everything I've seen of it. I mean, the green areas are definitely the green that you'd want. I mean,
Again, it's a primordial feel.
Yes.
And I think the variety, because you need to be able to, at least, well, with the Lord of the Rings we could see, you have to have a place that you can film the Shire, and at the same time,
Misty
the
Mountains.
Misty Mountains. I mean, that's
And
dramatically.
Mordor.
So
and Minas Tirith. and
I've always
Isengard
felt that
and-
Mordor could be filmed in the
Fangorn
United
and-
States. I mean, there's some great kind of more deserty areas.
So there's, what do you call it? There's another film I watched again for, last Thursday that was a George Lucas film
Oh.
that was also filmed in New Zealand.
What would that be? What do you think? How recent?
Not recent.
Not recent. Filmed in New
It's
Zealand.
not THX.
No.
1138.
No.
Which I give up.
It has many little people in it.
Oh, Willow.
Yes.
That was filmed in New Zealand?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
and what's that?
I hear
get
they're
to-
making a
had a
sequel.
very-
Yeah, so
quite
it's
very
not get too
terrain.
far out. off the beaten path there.
Isn't that quite the very terrain?
You know,
But it was
you can always.
it was written by Lucas, and
Well, wasn't
to
that
fit-
I didn't
Howard and Lucas
remember.
together?
It was, yes,
Yeah.
and it
Ron
was
Howard Lucas.
specifically with.
It was their version of D&D Adventure.
But it,
Yes.
Ooh, ouch.
Yes.
Really?
Have you ever read his books?
okay, but I will say that that the specifically that movie was in one sense created because of Lucas's interactions with help me out here, the actor. Oh.
Kilmer.
No, wait,
Harrison Ford?
Willow himself.
Oh,
Oh,
Willow Ufgood.
whoever he is,
I
yes.
don't remember.
My brain is just
Yeah.
skipped. He's in Star Wars as well.
Right.
He's all over the place.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
What's he in Star Wars?
Well, he was Wicket the Ewok, and then he's
Yeah.
also in episode 1. Anyway, so the name will come to me later. But right, so that was in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So this idea of pastoral, I mean, there's places in Great Britain you could find.
But untouched, though, because Britain
But
was
largely
worked
not
over
untouched.
by the Romans and all the
Yeah,
others.
yeah.
It's not untouched.
Well, not
New
only
Zealand's
that, but
mostly untouched.
getting the right,
Primordial.
like, you try to take a picture with the camera, and here's a farmhouse way out
Well, and all the old walls and everything else. Yeah, it's all been developed.
I think that's true. I mean, although it's interesting because when you look at Middle Earth and all the influences of Tolkien, that in terms of what he's drawing from, Middle Earth seems to be the most recent. Like, Shire. The Shire is
Sure. The
almost
Shire
like
you could have
early
shot in the UK,
Victorian.
totally.
Yes.
That would have been appropriate for the
Because they talk about postal service and they talk
Right.
about,
totally would make sense. Yes.
but it's
But you need to
still
be in a single location.
evocative
because it's
atmosphere.
expensive.
Yeah, and that's a natural.
Yeah, I think they did okay with their choice on that. It worked out.
Although I wonder how CGI. I mean, what will you try to do with Numenor? I mean, Mental Tarma. You've got to be that convincing, don't you? I mean, the problem, of course, is that I'm looking forward to at least seeing what they can try to do.
Mhm.
But then, of course, the limitations.
Falling short. of what you had in
Yeah.
imagination.
I mean, that's hard. Anyway. Okay. Well. Did anybody else have a different topic that they want to bring up today? That's Tolkien related. Before we jump into letter 166.
Anyone?
Did we, did they, so they're scheduled for two seasons, correct? We know this for-
They are approved. They're green lighted for 2 seasons. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they
They
got
already-
the casting.
Yep. Well, they have to cast some people yet. Anyway, we'll by next month maybe we'll have some updates on that.
Okay.
Maybe even some pictures of film. I don't know. Who knows what they'll release?
Do they have a projected date?
Nope. Sometime next year.
It'll get done when it gets done.
It's 2021 is what they're saying.
Well, I would like to believe that that's what they do, is they say it'll get done when it gets done.
No, there's always deadlines, but we don't need to know that. That's internal.
Yeah.
Just getting steps
So
done.
what? Just one more thing. Also, there actually one of the Inklings was a Kiwi. So
really?
yeah. So J.A.W. Bennett. He was part of the Inklings, and he was born in New Zealand. A literary scholar. He went to school in Auckland. He notably wrote the Mount Albert Grammar School hymn, which is sung at school assemblies to this day. He studied at the University of Auckland, where he's described by his biographer as poor and deserving, before going on to Merton College, Oxford, where, still indigent, he survived on a diet of Cornish pasties.
Oh.
In McNeish's book Dance of the Peacocks, he's noted as a member of what was to be described in British Academy. I can't say that right.
Academia?
No, it's the Academe, whatever. As the Oxford New Zealand Mafia, a loose-knit group of extraordinarily gifted young men from New Zealand who studied at Oxford before the Second World War. Many were Rhodes Scholars, and it links a whole bunch of them. But anyway, he was part of
Society.
kind of. And he became best known as a scholar of Middle English literature. He was editor of the journal Medium Avum from 1956 to 1980, having earlier assisted his predecessor, and was a colleague of C.S. Lewis at Magdalen College, Oxford, and succeeded Lewis as professor of medieval and Renaissance English
Oh, wow.
at Cambridge University in 1964 after Lewis's death. So, yeah, he was a Kiwi.
Cool.
All right.
Anything else?
I think of high culture coming from these places.
Well, it's kind of the British diaspora is what it is, isn't it?
Primitive yet high culture.
Okay.
Yeah.
The History of English-speaking Peoples by Winston Churchill. Okay, go ahead, fearless leader.
You keep saying that, and you don't think those words mean what you think they mean.
Would you prefer dear leader?
No.
Oh, Captain, my Captain.
All right, so
Humble
letter 166.
Yes.
Where we're at.
That is
Starting
where
with-
we are at.
It's is that a long one?
No, it's just a page.
167. Oh, there it is, right at the top. Okay.
Yeah.
He's black.
From a letter to Alan and Unwin, 22nd July, 1955. The proofs of the appendices to the third volume, The Return of the King, caused Tolkien much worry. They arrived late from the printers, and he found that the page intended to carry a phonetic key to the Angrathas of dwarf runes had been printed without the phonetic symbols it was supposed to contain.
Uh-oh.
He sent back this page with the symbols drawn in by hand, whereupon the printers reproduced this rough drawing in facsimile, which was not what he had intended. His wish was that they should set up the phonetic symbols in type. He was also anxious because he had not received page proofs of the narrative of The Return of the King, incorporating revisions that he had sent to the printers sometime earlier. The following letter, dealing with these matters, is typical of many harassed letters he wrote during these weeks. So it tells you there's many others back and forth that aren't in here. This is just an example.
Oh my goodness, though. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
To have the key, so the dwarf runes without the phonetic symbols.
Yeah. Have a problem. I returned in separate parcel the material sent to me, arrived midday Wednesday. I have done my best and quickest with it, but I fear I have missed today's post, and this will not go until tomorrow. Time is short, and the material rather intricate. I am still puzzled and dissatisfied with the procedure. At any rate, it makes my part much more laborious, and greatly increases the chances of errors and discrepancies still appearing in the published volume. I know that I sent in corrections after revised page proofs had been returned, but that is now a very long time back, and I do not yet understand why I should now receive queries, with a capital Q, raised by the head reader in the course of his, quote, final reading of the main text, end quote, that are not based on the final text, but on one that does not incorporate numerous and some extensive revisions. Errors are almost certain to occur or to have occurred at some of these points. The compositors always make mistakes in setting from my handwriting, exclamation mark. I am, well, we've seen his handwriting, so, you know.
Was it bad?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was scrawling.
In fact, Chris,
Poor Christopher Tolkien had so much trouble with it.
you were showing us that Christopher Tolkien's handwriting was actually better than his father's.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yes.
yeah. I am also a little disturbed because, though the selected pages of queries are presented for queries only, and contain corrections of small details as well as queries throughout, there remain errors in these pages that are neither queried nor corrected. For instance, the heading House of Healing throughout Book 5, Chapter 8, in spite of the chapter title. I have, however, very little time left now, and could not deal with anything that arrived after Wednesday morning next. Not being satisfied, nor indeed frankly wholly assured, I have made out a list of all the emendations, insertions, and corrections of the main text which do not yet appear in the proofs. I have made this list as clear as I can, and I hope it will be carefully checked with the text. I can only hope that the Angrathas will come out all right in the wash! Exclamation mark. But I am rather anxious. Geralds appear to have adopted my suggestion, and now propose to use the phonetic letter ng instead of my ng. But the table in printable form that I sent in, and which you reported on phone, was, you notice he puts an apostrophe phone for telephone.
Oh, wow.
Apostrophe phone, was being adopted used ng. Then a finger pointing, he has in here. I hope care will be taken to use ng or throughout, and also please not to replace ng by ng. I am alarmed by the reader's query of ng at the end of page 404, line 23. This reveals that, for all his eagle's eye, he has not understood the simple distinction that is being made, or so it would seem, ... I hope some of this is legible. I am very tired.
You know what? Being a sensitive person, an observant and sensitive person,
Yeah.
I always think it's hilarious. I was watching a deal one time about guys who do font for a living.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it drives them nuts because they drive down the street and the signs are all messed up and they want to fix them. And they're talking about this sign and it's the wrong font, and this sign and that can't be there. And this sign and
The kerning.
and
Yeah.
I just couldn't imagine being that sensitive to sitting down and reading something and then going, no, that's not right.
I had a visual communications professor at the University of Washington who was that way. He's dead, so I can speak about him as much as I want. He was that type of person, and it drove some of the students bonkers. It was okay by me because, you know, it's like, well, that's his professorism opinions.
Well, being that it's his material, he can be as picky as he wants.
Yeah.
Right,
But
trying to get it
still,
right.
those kinds of people, when they're that picky, that can be quite a burden to be that observant.
Well, and he's complaining that the typesetters aren't following along in his explanation of completely made-up language and writing system. So, you know, generally typesetter does not usually have to learn another language.
Yeah.
to
Right,
do the
exactly.
typesetting. So, I have a little more sympathy for the typesetters on this one. They're like,
Yes.
just line them up, just do it. You're not supposed to have to read the whole book and work.
Yes.
You're supposed to just lay it out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting challenge there.
I really want to know what he was referring to in here, because he clearly it matters to him, right? There
Yes.
must be a reason, and I think it's describing. I've written this before, but it's like when you say the word sing, you don't pronounce the G.
Mm-hmm.
Sing,
Yeah.
right? Not sing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
But
Right.
you do in singly.
But you're saying singe. You're
Right.
saying more like
Whether you have a
singe.
strong glottal. Or
Right,
not, yeah.
right, and there must have been an example where, and it must have been. I think it's in Elvish probably. It's one of those deals.
Well, like in Spanish, en.
Yeah.
En,
Yeah.
It's different than en.
right,
There are.
right.
En,
Well, I agree with you, Hawk. I think and I mean,
I do feel bad for the typesetter. I'm agreeing with you.
him and that guy.
And I feel for Tolkien too. I'm trying to get it right. And think about this. This is all by a little bit by apostrophe phone, but mostly by postal mail, crossing each other back and forth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Versus now we have email and all of these other things we can send.
What did we do before
And we complain
PDFs?
because it took 3 days of back and forth. Oh no!
Yeah.
Try years of back and forth.
Yeah.
Can we agree though that Twitter would not have been Tolkien's preferred medium?
Oh,
But he would have been happy with
He would have had an opinion.
annotated PDFs. He would be okay with.
Yeah, and he would have definitely had an
Yeah.
opinion about Twitter.
I had a dear old retired English
He just
professor
wouldn't tweet about it.
who was she was in her 80s and she had never had email before, and so she finally was like, okay, I'm going to get email. But when she first heard of it and somebody said, hey, do you want to have email, she, being a literary scholar, thought they were referring to a meal, which is like a book. It's like a work of literature, a meal. You know, she's like, I already have a copy of a meal. Why would I want another one? You know, it's like, no, email, electronic mail.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway.
That's funny.
Okay.
I've been on email since I was like 1978, 79.
Yeah, well, he had that connection with the university. Didn't he?
Right, yeah, University of Utah.
Do we want to read 167? It's pretty short.
Sure.
Sure. Okay. All right. Letter 167 from a letter to Christopher and Faith Tolkien, 15th of August, 1955. Tolkien, with his daughter Priscilla, visited Italy from late July to mid-August.
Going on holiday.
I am still staggered by the frescoes of Assisi. You must visit it. We came in for the great feast of Santa Chiara and the eve of August the 11th to the 12th. High Mass sung by Cardinal Micara with silver trumpets at the elevation! Exclamation mark. I am typing out a diary. I remain in love with Italian and feel quite lorn without a chance of trying to speak it. We must keep it up. On the whole, for pure fun and pleasure, I enjoyed the first days at Venice most. But we lived very cheap in Assisi, and I have brought about £50 back. Our opera was washed out by torrents all Thursday evening, but they put on a special extra on Friday, our last day in Venice, at which our tickets were good. So we had our Rigoletto, perfectly astounding. So we enjoyed the music, and
We got the little world there.
it's funny to me that the only language that he really didn't enjoy was Gaelic,
Yeah.
Irish Gaelic.
I thought he didn't like Slavic. Was it
I
Slavic?
don't
or
really have
anything?
trouble with that.
I don't know.
He liked Yiddish.
I think he wanted to be able, but he could never.
I think that's what the thing with Irish Gaelic is
Yeah,
just like
no,
I
he-
can't
he-
figure
right.
out how this
Right,
works.
yeah, that was the problem. It didn't follow the rules.
Right.
Remember we had that whole thing about him going on
Whereas-
about the lack of rules to follow.
Yeah, and
That's
all-
what drove him nuts.
All the Romance languages would have had their common origin in Latin,
Right,
so
but
he
the
would have been fine with
Gaelic,
that.
it just befuddled him.
Well,
because
you've got
figure out the
Latin
rules.
languages, you've got Germanic languages, and then what is this? You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, we read a whole thing about that. That
Although
was
he loved
frustrating.
Welsh and
Right.
was heavily influenced by it, and
He
really
liked the sound,
the only difference.
but the lack of rules,
Yeah.
he couldn't abide.
But the only difference is really you've got the P and the B Brythonic. So so like where you've got like Nab as kind of like the son of, right?
Right.
You know, in Welsh, but then it becomes Mac, you know, in the Gaelic. But it's so, but more the northern form is what Scottish and Irish Gaelic became, and then you've got the Welsh and then Britain is the southern form. I Cornish was also part of that, but that language has died out. Anyway. Yeah. So, did we want to take a stab at Kalevala? Do you want me to go grab that,
Yeah,
or do we?
yeah, no, let's do that.
Okay. All right.
Well, it's interesting to note that
He might have broadcasting down there, so you want.
He did have-
Camera, but, you know.
he did have a few words that were Italian influenced. Carne, which means meat, is or red actually, is one of the words that was in the Elvish language. I don't remember. I think it's red. It's related to red.
But
I
that's
can't remember.
also Spanish.
Right, but he knew that it was Romance language
Uh-huh.
related.
Okay.
Yeah. Him being a Roman Catholic and liking the Romance language, I mean, that kind of seems
Yeah,
like it
there's-
goes hand in hand a little bit.
Yeah. We've got our children start learning Latin next. Vera starts learning Latin next year, and I haven't learned a lick of it, so I'm going to be learning right next to her, and that'll be good.
We learned great big gobs of greasy grimy gopher guts in French.
So, but then
Not quite as impressive.
this classical Christian school started or planted a Greek Orthodox classical Christian school, and they're going to learn Greek and have the Orthodox church calendar as their schooling.
Wow.
But but learning Latin will be interesting. Having learned Germanic and Japanese, I think Latin will be foreign to me. We ended, as I recall, chapter 1. So we are at chapter 2.
Oh, you got through the whole chapter?
The singing duel
Is it-
of
Is it
Wainamoinen.
one story or a whole bunch of stories strung together?
Jehoiakim. They're,
Episodic and all, is what I'm asking.
yeah, I would say so, somewhat. But
You want me to read?
sure. So
I don't know how to pronounce the name.
there's verse and then more of a prose version of the verse.
Okay. So what do I read?
No, I want to keep you for a second.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, go ahead and read.
Okay.
I don't know what I'm reading here.
So
I thought that you guys dropped the meetings.
Just for research.
So here's the verse first. Venerable Wainamoinen lived a life of great contentment on those Vainoldas, green meadows, on the heaths of Kalevala, telling tales and singing verses, chanting runes of ancient wisdom. Days on end he went on singing, even sang into the nightfall memories of bygone ages and the legends of creation, runes not sung by any children, nor perceived by many stalwarts in these evil, hopeless ages, in this fleeting life of sorrow.
Ooh, that's beautiful. In these evil, fleeting ages. What's that last line?
No, in these evil, hopeless ages, in this fleeting life of sorrow.
Wow. What page is that on there?
22, the beginning of chapter 2.
Okay.
Venerable Wainamoinen, famous sage and rune singer, lived in Wainola on the heaths of Kalevala. He was a renowned shaman and possessed primordial, ageless memories, knew the deep origins of things, and could sing songs of creation for days on end.
Yeah, so basically the Finnish version of the wizard.
So how do you pronounce this one? Joy? J-O-U-K. Joy.
Only
Yukahainen. Yeah, Yukahainen.
Yeah.
Lanky lad of Lapland, lived in distant Poljola. Bohjola.
Pojola. Probably.
Pojola.
Pojola.
Yeah.
Probably Pojola.
Yeah. Wainamoinen's great reputation reached his ears, and he became annoyed. He himself wanted to be known as the best rune singer. He would go and challenge Wainamoinen to a duel of words. His mother and father tried to stop him, but Yukahainen had faith in himself. Good is the knowledge of my father and my mother, even better. But my own opinion is peerless. This, he declared, leapt brashly onto his sleigh and struck his fiery steed with the whip. Now off to Vainola.
So this is his rival talking?
Yep. Yukahainen drove along for a day, 2, even a third. At last he arrived in the meadows of Vainola. There Wainamoinen and Yukahainen happened to meet on the road. Recklessly, Yukahainen smashed into Wainamoinen's sleigh, breaking his sleigh and shafts into pieces.
Ancient Finnish road rage.
The crazed horses neighed wildly as their collars became wedged. There lay the two sleighs in a tangle on the road. Who the devil are you, driving so heedlessly into me and breaking my sleigh? Vainamoinen demanded angrily. I am Youkahainen, and who are you? I am Vainamoinen. Move aside, youngster.
Oh, nice.
Out of the way, Peck!
Fiercely sang old Vainamoinen. Waters heaved and heartland rumbled. Copper mountains shook and trembled. Rocky ledges detonated.
I'm thinking John Bon Jovi right now, kind of.
John
but with a
Bon
beard.
Jovi.
But like with silver hair and a beard, yeah.
Yeah, mossy cliffs were split asunder. Stones upon lakeshore crumbled. So my wife's grandfather and grandmother on her mother's side are Laplanders.
Oh, wow.
So,
Wow, you've got Suomi ancestry. I didn't know that.
yes. My wife does.
Your wife does.
Hey, I can read. I just didn't.
Oh.
I just was having a hard time with the names.
Oh, as we all do. Don't feel bad, Corey.
Yes.
There's only one Finn among us, and he will probably correct your pronunciation, so go ahead.
I may be young, but my knowledge is more profound. This annoyed Vainamoinen. Well, what kind of knowledge do you have? Precise and accurate knowledge. I have roamed many lands, journeyed north and south. I know about whitefish, salmon, pike, and perch. I know hills, rocks, lakes, and rapids. Of these, Vuski rapids are the greatest. Nothing can surpass Imatra. Vainamoinen interrupted. That's but children's prattle, not the talk of a bearded man. He observes scornfully. Tell me ancient creation stories. Youkahainen became excited. I know birds, I know snakes, I know the birth of iron and fire. Vainamoinen yawned. Do you remember anything else, or is this the end of your chatter? He mocked.
Oh.
It so happens I remember the time when earth was created, the sun, the seas and mountains and perimeters of air, the arc of heaven, the moon, the sun and stars. Now Vainamoinen grew angry. You are lying. You were not around then. You claim you were present when the world was created. You made that up. You want to fight? Swords! Go to
The long knives come out.
Go to the devil with your sword. I will not cross swords with the likes of you, wretch. Youkahainen started raging. He spat out the worst insult he could make up. I curse you and turn you into a pig. A man such as you I will push into a pile of manure. This made Vainamoinen furious. The impudent whelp, he began to intone magic words. Heartland rumbled, mountains trembled, rocky ledges detonated, and boulders split with the power of the shaman's spells. Terrible things began to happen. Youkahainen, can't pronounce it right, his sleigh flew into the pond and turned into pine logs. His whip changed into reeds and his horse into rocks by the shore. His sword transformed into lightning and his dog into field stones. His cap flew up and became a cloud in the sky. His mittens soon floated on the pond as water lilies. Youkahainen,
His mittens, did you say?
his mittens.
He even took his mittens, man.
Youkahainen himself sank into the bog right up to his armpits. He could not move, even his foot. Youkahainen had met his better. Let me go, Vainamoinen. I will pay you whatever you want. Reverse your spell. Well, what will you give me? Take my bow. I have several. Take my boat. Mine is better. Take my horse. I do not want your horse. You can have a whole helmet full of gold. My storehouses are full. I do not care for your gold, you wretch. than take my sandy fields. I don't even know what that is. My own are better. Jotunheim felt himself sinking. His mouth was full of moss and his beard in a sad state. The current carried the fellow's feet and gravel round his eyes. Wow. You can have my sister.
Take my sister, please.
For your wife, Jotunheim cried in despair. This made Vandermoinen happy. He would get a sweet young girl to cheer him in his old age. I'm not sure what to say about that. Whew. I know that they had age separation, but I don't know what that means. This made Vandermoinen happy. Oh, I already said that, sorry. He did not wish to torment the pitifully weeping youth any longer. Jotunheim was freed from his predicament, and he even got his horse and sleigh back. Oh, I said it wrong, but gloomily he started off for home. Hearing this, old Vandermoinen, he was mightily delighted to win Jotunheim's sister to bring comfort to in his dotage. I'm sorry, I don't know what I can say about that. Anybody want to clear this up for me, what it means exactly? On a singing scar he settled, exulting in jubilation. Sang a moment, sang a second, then continued for another, thus inverting all his magic, reversing his incantations.
It reminds me of in Fiddler on the Roof, where the matchmaker is like, I found a great match for you, but it's like a man who's like twice her age or whatever, kind of thing.
Well, there's chapter 2 then, I guess that's done and over with.
Cool.
Chapter 2, very good.
Yep.
Finish chapter 2.
We
Finished chapter 2. Oh, that joke never gets old.
Oh boy.
Hey, by the way, fun fact, as I've said before, but I never tire of this. It's to the Finns that we owe the log cabin of America. Abraham Lincoln growing up in a log cabin, right? Which seems to be just so American. It was the forest Finns that the Swedes brought over to Delaware and New Jersey back in the 1600s. That's how the log cabin was first brought over, and then everybody else said, that's a great idea.
And it's to the Finns and the Swedes working together, which never happens, to provide a railway, if you will, of exodus of Russian Jews to the New World.
Really?
As things got worse and worse
For the Russian Jews?
in the revolution.
Oh,
Yes.
interesting. So through Finland and through Sweden.
Yeah, they went that way.
And then through the Baltic.
because they couldn't go through Europe because of the amount of anti-Semitism in Europe.
Right. And you had ancestors who were Russian Jews, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And this would be your great-grandfather who immigrated, or his father?
Yes. Great-grandfather and probably his
Early 1900s,
Yeah,
1920s, 1910,
Yeah.
pre-World War I.
Yeah, pre-revolution,
But
they
pogroms
already
were-
knew.
Pogroms were already happening.
Yeah.
So it's really literally on a Tufka. Yeah.
Yeah.
What? Wow.
Yep. But it was out of the kindness of the Finns and the Swedes
Give them another way of
allowing safe travel.
Have you ever, this is not really related to Tolkien at all, but I think he would be interested in this. There's a fascinating, I think it was National Geographic had an article on a family of Jews. No, I'm sorry, they weren't Jewish. They were the old believers. They were Russian Orthodox, but they were of that group
Sure.
from the
They
1700s.
Yeah, they interacted a lot together.
Okay, because
Yes.
they were very traditional and they wouldn't cut their beards. And Peter the Great was against them and
Sure, of
persecuted them. Okay,
Yeah.
so when the Bolshevik Revolution happened, they also got targeted.
Yes.
So
and
this-
they left too.
right?
Yes.
So this family ends up fleeing into the wilderness somewhere north of Lake Baikal
Uh-huh.
in this really rugged area.
Yeah.
And like they lose all contact with human civilization from like the 1917, 1918 or whatever,
Right.
all the way until they're rediscovered in the 1970s.
Not surprised.
And they've basically made it a
Their
cabin.
own colony.
Yeah, well, and it's very small. I mean, these poor people and these kids who were small when they left, or maybe were born, I think, after this couple had left.
Right.
They only ever heard their parents' speech, and they talked so little that when they were rediscovered by Russians, modern
Probably
Russians,
couldn't
Yeah, the
communicate
Russians
really
did.
well.
hardly. It was very interesting. I'll see if I can send you that link. It's
Yeah,
really
that
fascinating.
would be interesting.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I think that's a good spot to probably stop. It's okay. So we finished chapter 2 of Kalevala. We read 2 letters of Tolkien. We hashed out lots of interesting discussion topics. And going back to something you said earlier, Corey, I would just say that we can't go back and change anything about the movies the way they were made, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see how well they have to do Sauron well. It kind of stands or falls in some ways on believability.
Well, it's just, I guess it's hard for me, because Tolkien didn't really realize, I think, that when you put it, you put the Lord of the Rings in the order that he did, it's different when you translate something from a book into a movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, we understand the evil intent that Sauron had, and we knew what kind of personality he had, and so on and so forth, because we read a little bit of the Silmarillion, and he even had a little bit of the Excalibur.
Yeah.
In the original 3 books, he had a little piece of that.
In the appendices.
Right, in the appendices.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, I feel like, as a character, like, you really don't understand why he's trying to take over the world, other than he's just this evil guy,
Yeah.
unless you really
Yeah. You need to
read the earlier stuff.
For
Like,
sure.
he kind of comes off as a bland,
Yeah.
elemental evil that's just kind of there.
Right. Right. Okay, so I think, Hawk, if that's okay, we'll go ahead and wrap things up now.
Sorry.
It's okay. So unless anybody else had any final comments, we can probably sign off. And our next meeting will be on the 3rd Saturday of March, which is the 21st. I will not be there that day because there's a men's retreat that my church is putting on. But I can watch the broadcast and take
Is
notes
it a
of
strategic retreat, though? That's the question.
Backwards, Marcus!
Run away! Bravely.
Sir Robin. Yes.
Chickening out and running away.
Yeah, no, it's a good retreat. But anyway, if you guys can carry on without me, that'd be great. I'll take the notes.
We'll carry the torch.
Meanwhile, Danielle has me scheduled for 2 post
Excellent.
sessions, so
Excellent.
yeah, and I should be able to be.
I sure hope Siska Games find somebody to keep up the
Oh my goodness, yeah, me too.
What?
It has to do with the role playing system, the One Ring.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Ta-ta for now. Namarie.
Namarie.
Oh yeah.